Next book review today is about a book I listened to recently called MBS, and it's about Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. It's an interesting book. It's written by an American journalist who was, he's a journalist that works for the New York Times, and he was the correspondent in Arabia for some years. He's not someone who's actually personally had personal contact with MBS, but he's someone that has closely followed the politics in that country and has many friends from Saudi Arabia and has kept in touch with what's been going on. So MBS stands for Mohammed bin Salman. Muhammad, the son of Salman. Salman is the king of Saudi Arabia at the time. At this time, and he has appointed MBS, who's his sixth son, I believe, as his crown prince. So after the king dies, MBS will become king. Interestingly, I didn't know that all the kings of Saudi Arabia have been sons of the founder, King Abdulaziz. So King Abdulaziz founded the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as it's called, before the Second World War, and he had, the support of the British and the Americans at that time. And after his time, all of the kings after him have been his sons. So he had, I think over 20 sons from many different wives. And all of his sons and daughters, they had many sons and daughters as well, all of them. So there are literally, thousands of princes and princesses in Saudi Arabia. Salman, who's the current king, is one of the youngest of the sons of the original founder of Saudi Arabia, King Abdulaziz. Now, after him, there's no other brothers that can take the throne. So for the first time after him, it's going to go to one of the next generation, which is going to be one of the grandsons. And Muhammad ibn Salman, known in short as MBS, has been designated. As I said, it's not his first son, but about his sixth son from his second or third wife. So MBS is the one who has created headlines in the last few years, supposedly so-called modernizing Saudi Arabia, bringing it up to date with the rest of the world. He's the one who ended the ban on women driving, and has been opening up the country to entertainments, for example, like cinemas and things like that, which were unheard of in the country. As you probably know, Saudi Arabia, before this time, was under the clutches of a very strict, hardline Wahhabi clerics. This was a partnership between the ruling family of Ibn Saud and the preacher of the 18th century, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. These two formed an alliance back at that time, which continued down to the present day, underground to some extent, and they were confined to certain towns in the Najd in the east of Saudi Arabia. And then after the First World War, when the Ottoman Empire was defeated by Britain and France and others, and the Ottoman Empire was dismantled by the Western powers, this is when Abdulaziz grabbed power in Arabia with the support and the wink from the British. So that's when the story starts, and it was named the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. A rather horrible name for a country, and not very respectful of the land, which is a sacred land, for Muslims around the world. The Hijaz, Makkah, Medina, these are sacred places. So to give that name Arabia to a name of a family, the Saudis, is totally disrespectful and ridiculous, really. But anyway, that's what the situation is. Now, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, the book talks about how he has risen to power. He's one of the only, one of the princes that never really lived outside of Saudi Arabia. He grew up and spent his life there. Many of them, they go off and they live in America or Britain or other countries where they study. And so they get to see the world. He's never been out of that country. He couldn't speak English very well, for example, but his English has been improving in recent years since he became the crown prince. And this is probably one of the reasons why his father, King Salman, prefers him as well, because he's very rooted in Arabia amongst those people. But that does have its drawbacks, because he doesn't really seem to understand the world. He doesn't really seem to get what's going on around. He's grown up in this bubble. So the way he's behaved has been sometimes bizarre, verging on just completely crazy. So, for example, the kidnapping and detaining of a prime minister, the prime minister of Lebanon, Saad Hariri, was actually taken into captivity by the Saudis when he was there on a visit. I mean, that is absolutely crazy and unheard of. That they felt they could actually do that to a prime minister of a different country. And they basically, Saad Hariri then appeared on television from Saudi Arabia tendering his resignation. And so, this is absolutely the way the guy works, Mohammed bin Salman. And then obviously the big news that you probably all heard of was the killing, brutal murder of a Saudi journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. Jamal Khashoggi was a Saudi journalist who was very moderate as well. He wasn't, a massive critic of Saudi Arabia or anything like that, but he was, he wanted to have the freedom to speak and to criticize, but often in a very constructive way and a very respectful way. But even that, it wasn't tolerated by MBS. So since MBS has come into this position of power as the crown prince, and the king is very elderly, and the king doesn't really seem to do much. So, MBS is really running the show, and he's sort of taken all of the power in his hands. Whereas previously, power within the Saudi Arabia used to be distributed amongst the princes, the sons of Abdulaziz. They were in charge of different major departments. One would be in charge of the military, intelligence, different. He has concentrated power in his own hands, and he sort of has portrayed himself as someone who has got this new vision for Saudi Arabia, and he wants to change things. He wants to get rid of the bad image of Saudi Arabia, especially since 9/11. So on the one hand, he's sort of portraying himself as this person who is trying to make, sort of trying to westernize really his country, or you could call modernize, by locking up a lot of the scholars, the hardline clerics, doing all these things. But at the same time, he is such a autocratic and tyrannical streak to him, which is manifest in the way that this poor journalist, who was just, respectful towards the royal family and loved his country, but was wanted to be able to speak openly and criticize things what he thought was being done wrong. Jamal Khashoggi was in Turkey, and he went to the Saudi embassy there just to get some paperwork or something. You know, these secret agents were sent from Saudi Arabia. There was a team of them, about 9 or 10, that came into Turkey on that day because they knew he had an appointment to come to the embassy. So they came in especially for that. And he went into the embassy, and his wife was waiting outside for him. His wife was a Turkish woman. And he never came out. So she then raised the alarm. She found a minister within the Turkish government that they had contact with. And obviously it became a massive thing. The Turks were not at all happy, you know, that this person was killed inside of Turkey. And initially this was completely denied by the Saudis that they had anything to do with it. But they did such a bad job. This was the other funny thing about it, you know. The Saudi intelligence agencies did such a terrible job. In fact, Donald Trump, who's very pro-Saudi and very pro-MBS, you know, he described it, you know, in his characteristic way, he described it as the worst cover-up in the history of cover-ups. You know, this is Saudi intelligence. They, you know, the Turks were very quickly able to identify all of the people that had come into the country. These so-called spies, you know, Saudi intelligence agents had come in, and the Turks were immediately, within a few days, able to identify all of them by name, make that known. You know, there were videos of them coming through the customs and everything. The Turks were able to get recordings of what happened inside the embassy. So basically, Jamal Khashoggi was killed. He was given a lethal injection, and I think he was suffocated with a plastic bag. And then his body was cut up into pieces and taken out in black bags. All of that was uncovered by the Turkish investigation. And the Saudis eventually had to admit that this had happened. But MBS said that he knew nothing about it and it had been done without his authorization and so on. So this is the type of person we're talking about. Apparently MBS was surprised and said to one of his close people, you know, why is everyone making such a big fuss about one Saudi citizen being killed? You know, just didn't understand how things work, and you know, the fact that this guy was a journalist that was writing for American newspapers, and it sort of crossed the line, you know, that someone like that could just be murdered in cold blood. And people like MBS just think that they can get away with it. And he has got away with it because he's too valuable to the Americans and the West, because he's buying billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons from America and Britain, and pumping billions and billions of dollars of oil wealth into the US and Western economies. MBS has made a big effort to get in close with the Americans, you know. He wants to be chummy with them. When Barack Obama was in power, the Saudis were not very happy because of the American the sort of easing of tensions with Iran and the Iran nuclear deal that Barack Obama put together. But since Trump came into power, the Saudis are much more happy because the Saudis' big enemy is Iran, and MBS has his direct communication through WhatsApp with Jared Kushner, who's one of the main advisors to Donald Trump, and his son-in-law. So yeah, it's an interesting book. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, MBS, he comes across a little bit of a joker, really. You can't really take this guy seriously. I mean, he's got all these grand plans for. He wants to build this massive new city in the desert, which is called Neom, and it's called Neom because it's from Neo Mustaqbal. Neo obviously meaning new, and Mustaqbal in Arabic meaning future. So this is his grand idea to build this city, which is apparently going to cost $500 billion, and it's going to be built on the Red Sea coast, and it's going to be a futuristic city which is full of robots and artificial intelligence, and people will live this sort of amazing, perfect life, surrounded by robots that will serve them, and they'll be watched and listened to everything by the Saudi state. And he just comes up with some crazy ideas, like for example, he was really excited about having beaches that will be glow in the dark, beaches of sand that will glow in the dark, and just really silly stuff like that, that just really making a fool of himself, really. So that's basically some of the highlights from the book. It's a very interesting book for those who want to understand more about MBS and the Saudis. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum.